Right, members of the arts sector have been left with unanswered questions after Sports, Arts and Culture Minister Nathi Mthethwa's briefing on the presidential stimulus employment program funds. The industry is baffled as to why Mthethwa did not release the report into the funds managed by the National Arts Council at the briefing in Pretoria. Here's what artist and activist Eugene Mthethwa and Sibongile Mngoma had to say on this matter when I spoke to them last week. Right, we will continue to touch base with that story and, of course, flesh it out more extensively in a short while from now. We will be joined by the department spokesperson, Masechaba Khumalo, who will be speaking on behalf of the minister to give us some sense of response to all the concerns that have been raised by the artists. Of course, the National Arts Council has been a focal point, as we've seen from April, where a sit-in has been launched by various artists in the sector, really unhappy with the manner in which the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture has handled this matter. They're concerned that they haven't received part of the benefits that come with that 300 million rand stimulus package to respond to some of the concerns that were raised here. I'm joined by spokesperson for the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, Masechaba Khumalo. Masechaba, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for coming in to speak to us about a really pressing matter. You watched some of the concerns. You wanted to come in to make sure that you have your part being told and heard by South Africans.
Absolutely. Good morning to you and good morning to your viewers, and thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about the performance of the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture. But before we begin, I would just like to step out of the conversation for 2 seconds, just to congratulate Bafana on their 3-1 win against Ethiopia yesterday.
In fact, I want us to talk about sports stadiums a little bit later on, especially in response to what Deputy President David Mabuza had to say about reaching herd immunity before allowing. But we'll get to that. Let's hear the response then from the grievances that have been raised. Quite serious. Artists going on months on end, struggling to make ends meet, struggling to pay bonds and debt and school fees. It's been quite serious.
It is a very serious matter. I mean, if we had to take it a step back, on the 15th of March, when President Cyril Ramaphosa announced a national state of disaster, life as we knew it changed drastically, especially for the sport, arts and culture sector. And we are very cognizant of that. But fast track through the entire period of what has been essentially a very devastating time for the sector, we have been through 3 phases of relief funding process. And what I would like to highlight, especially at this point in time, especially in addressing the grievances of artists, is that now at the point where we are, the department is implementing our economic economic reconstruction plan, which is in line with what the President has insisted that we do, focus more, move away from relief and focus on the economic recovery and reconstruction plan.
Moving away from the relief, I don't think that will solve the problems here, because the artists, in our discussion last week, for instance, Eugene Mthethwa spoke about how he says that he has received 10,000 rand and he doesn't understand how other artists have received so much more. What sort of criteria was used here when it comes to allocating these funds? There are still a huge number of artists who are still without the funds, even today. 300 million rand put aside, and artists have nothing to show for it.
It's incorrect to say that artists have nothing to show for it, because the fact of the matter is that 96% of that 300 million has been dispersed. It is sitting in the pockets of the artist. And the 4% that is outstanding is literally in the process of being paid out to artists. So before we address the specific facts of the numbers, we have to be very clear about the disingenuity of a select few.
Yeah.
It's the same members of the sector who are making personal attacks. And mind you, the majority of the artists are not behind them, because as much as, yes, we have admitted the minister has consistently relayed the message that there is funding, albeit it can never reach every single person. But we have to make it clear and set the record straight and say that the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture, led by Minister Nathi Mthethwa, has indeed made significant inputs and investment into the sport, arts and culture sector.
Masechaba, you speak about 95%.
96%.
96%. When was this figure reached at? I mean, it's been a few weeks since this report was unveiled, which artists say they haven't had a chance to even go through. It wasn't given to them to analyze and really get to making sense with the details there. That's also one matter that was raised and put on the table. But the 96%, when did we get to 96%?
It hasn't been a few weeks. It's actually only been 1 week. If you remember correctly, about a week ago, approximately 10 days ago, less than 2 weeks ago, the minister briefed the media on the NAC forensic investigation report outcomes, and this is when it was announced exactly when we had reached our targets. And also furthermore, remember that there have been ongoing processes with programs that have been implemented, as I had spoken about the economic recovery and reconstruction plan. For instance, on the 1st of June, the department launched the Mzansi Golden Economy. We opened for proposals through the Mzansi Golden Economy for various work streams, and adjudication has been underway. For 2 of the work streams, we have been in touch with the applicants who have been informed whether they qualified, whether they did not qualify, and a total amount of 63 million rand has been set aside for this particular economic grant, which is really about creating job opportunities within the sector.
That's a fantastic initiative, but there's still 300 million rand, which is exclusive of the 65 million that you speak of. And that 300 million rand is the bone of contention. You speak about a disgruntled few. You say the majority of artists are relatively pleased with the manner in which the monies have since been rolled out, since the minister took it upon himself to address this issue. What motive would the others have to continue in such an aggressive manner, to continue to say the minister must step down, to say that the funds have not been allocated to the right people? Why have other people gotten so much of the benefits, while others, a select few, seem to have benefited more than others? Why are so many of them coming to the forefront with such aggressive complaints? What motive would they have?
Well, you see, a lot of the personal attacks have been launched on social media. And we need to be clear about one thing as South Africans. It's not the entire of South Africa that is on social media. When you look at the percentage of people that are on social media, I'm not sure if we're sitting at 6 million South Africans currently on Twitter versus 56 million South Africans. When something is trending, it doesn't mean that there are 56 million unhappy South Africans, or the 1.1 million practitioners, acting practitioners in the sport, arts and culture sector. It can literally take 10 people or 20 to make any particular subject trend. And we have noticed that there is an agenda by a select few. You've mentioned some of their names, and it is a targeted harassment against the minister. And we've not engaged it because we don't have anything to say. It's just that we are so focused on the job at hand.
Why would they want to attack the minister, though?
Oh, well, you would have to pose that question to them. But any intelligent person can see that there are people who are specifically advocating for the demise of the minister when the majority of the artists have been benefiting. Some of those people who are targeting the minister have actually benefited from the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture. So we have been very upfront in terms of our communication, albeit we can always improve in that regard. However, all you need to do is just go onto our official websites to find every single statement. It is well documented, the work that has been done by the ministry and the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture.
The report that you speak of spoke to the issues of mismanagement of funds, misconduct. There were councillors who had 7 days to give their reasons why they should not be suspended for mismanaging 300 million rand. Did the minister get a response from these individuals?
So as it stands, I can't get into specific detail around the forensic investigation report. Suffice to say that in terms of consequence management, everything is being done to ensure that those people who, as the minister has admitted, are incompetent, quite frankly, would be dealt with very sternly. But nonetheless, I have to be clear. You know, sometimes it's no soap. We have to be clear about the language that we use. Yeah. So there's the issue of, you know, some people have said 300 million has been squandered. Some people have said stolen, misappropriated. There was an overcommitment by almost 300 million rands that was not there. So it's not to say her money disappeared. No money disappeared. In fact, 96% of it is sitting in the pockets of artists.
You know, you say 96% is sitting in the pocket of artists. I went to the National Arts Council sit-in that was staged in April, and the room was packed. In fact, more and more artists kept coming in. Prominent artists that we see on our screens, we view their work, and they spoke about how they had access to pages that showed that monies didn't in fact land in the pockets of artists. Monies landed in bank accounts associated to construction, nothing to do with the arts sector. Is this true?
Fake news. They would need to provide proof of what they are saying, because we have published the list of names of artists who have benefited. So we've been able to substantiate the information that we've provided to the media through well-documented processes. So don't believe the hype. And when you say that there were hordes of, excuse me if I'm misquoting you, but how many artists are we talking about versus the 1.1 practicing artists, arts and cultural practitioners in the industry? So a select few, there will always be resistance. But nonetheless, we are focused on the task at hand. There are many programs within the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture that are really, really making a difference in the lives of practitioners.
Masechaba, I want us to hold this discussion. We will continue the discussion in a short while. I'm in conversation with the spokesperson for the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, Masechaba Khumalo, speaking to some of the remarks that have been made and some of the grievances that have been spoken of by a number of artists when it comes to the distribution of that stimulus package, 300 million rand, that has really been a bone of contention. We'll continue with this discussion. You've heard some of it being dismissed by the department as fake news. We'll return shortly after this. Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us on the Weekend Report, in conversation with Masechaba Khumalo, who is the department spokesperson of the Sports, Arts and Culture Department, answering to some of the questions that have been raised when it comes to the allocation of funds, a stimulus package when it comes to assisting artists during COVID-19. Let's now go back to the artists that I spoke to last week, which prompted the response from the department. Eugene Mthethwa as well as Spongile Mngoma were responding to some concerns, and this is what they had to say.
Even from the figures that they don't tally, there is 208-something million that has already been paid, but we have so many members who have not been paid. Now, again, he says that there is no money that is lost, but there's mismanagement. What is mismanagement? Is mismanagement not part of the lost money that went to, what about the construction companies that were listed in the list of the beneficiaries, the environmentalists who were listed, the big companies that were listed in the beneficiaries list, companies that were approved 5 times or 6 times or 10 times? He doesn't speak to that part. He's only saying there's nothing wrong with, there's no money that was lost. Every cent went to artists.
The minister talks of 2 council members that are still part of the council of the NAC, and yet there are new council members who have benefited. And according to the National Arts Council Act, they are not supposed to benefit at all during their term. Never mind that the applications were made before they were inducted. The bottom line is they applied knowing that they had also applied to become council members. So there's a lot of integrity missing in this picture.
Right, some of those grievances raised by two artists there. Masechaba, what do you have to say to these sort of concerns? I mean, let's speak to the first one. You said 96% of funds have been rolled out. Eugene speaks of about 208 million rand, yes, been allocated, but there are still gaps, loopholes that raise a lot of question marks.
Look, the truth is that there will always be gaps because we've always been very upfront about the fact that the amount of funding that is available to the arts and culture sector, sport arts and culture sector, could never be sufficient for every single practitioner in the sector. That is a fact. So we can't dispute that. So we're not saying that every single artist has been funded or every single artist has benefited from the department. We are simply saying that it is incorrect to make claims that the department is doing nothing. And it is disingenuous, especially from people like Eugene Mthethwa, who are beneficiaries of the department, to spew vile and vitriol. Give a balanced perspective. Yeah. You know, we don't mind being challenged. You know, we are here to grow. We are here to get better and to better service the sport, arts and culture sector. But we need people who will engage us and present a balanced perspective when they do so.
In presenting this balanced perspective, Masechaba, we the media, in fact, have found it very difficult to get hold of Minister Mthethwa. It's either he avails himself but doesn't make it to studio. He's let us down several times. Just communicating with him and getting access to him is a major challenge. Why is that? Because surely had we had the time as the media to tackle some of these issues that are being raised here, perhaps the bone of contention and the anger wouldn't be so aggressive when it comes to important issues and loopholes that are just making way for even bigger problems.
Why is that? COVID-19 has changed the way that we do things over the last year and a half. I mean, since the 15th of March of the year before last. So, to be fair to the minister has availed himself for multiple interviews across various platforms. The only difference is that he's not been coming to studio. For instance, it's my first studio interview since the president announced a national state of disaster. So it is purely because of health regulations that the minister has not been coming to studio, but it's incorrect to say that he's not availed himself for interviews. He does all the time.
My producers, Masechaba, and I know other producers have requested Zoom interviews with him, and he's simply not available to answer to these very important questions, because the artists speak about wanting clear communication, wanting transparency, which has not been given.
So just to give you another example, in fact 2 months ago, we launched what we have termed #ForTheRecord. These are media engagement sessions that the minister specifically requested, where he has created a platform for him to engage with yourselves, with media right across the board, whether it be your big networks or your community radio and television platforms. Every single month, the minister engages the media on specific themes to set the record straight or to appraise the media and the public on the programs and the work that has been done by the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture. So it's unfortunate, and I'm pretty certain that he will oblige upon invitation. So we'll make sure the minister is here. Yes, I commit myself and I commit the minister. The minister will come and have a sit-down conversation with you.
Okay, so where to from here? Where to from here? I mean, you speak about another brilliant initiative which will certainly put money in the pockets of artists, but this report is still something that is ongoing. There has been time given out for people to be held accountable, to give their responses in terms of the National Arts Council members, to speak about why they should not be suspended. I think it was Eugene who speaks about, or was it Sibongile, who speaks about council members who have not been named, saying that the department is easy to name artists, but refuses to name these 2 individuals, I think out of 8, who have been accused or suspected of being involved in some sort of misconduct and mismanagement when it comes to the allocation of those funds. Is it a strategic move not to name and shame before, you've conducted a thorough investigation?
100%. And when the forensic investigation report is released, it will be released by the NAC. And all will be revealed ultimately. So let's just wait for the process to be concluded.
But the artists also raise, they're really calling for Minister Mthethwa's head. They're saying that he is not engaging them. He is not coming to the party when it comes to their concerns, and they say that he should resign. What do you make of that? You and I both know that this is simply not true whatsoever. Taking it back to the most difficult time of the year, back to the President's announcement of the national state of disaster, the first thing that the Minister did was to gather the sectors, the sporting sector and the arts and culture sector. So every single decision that has been made and is being made through the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture, led by Minister Nathi Mthethwa, is based on advice and guidance from the sector itself. So these are not just decisions that are made at high level. These are decisions that are influenced and advised and guided by people that are chosen by the sector, by the way, not chosen by the minister. And so there have always been consultative processes happening from day one. So it's simply not true. And I would implore every single person to follow our websites, to follow us on social media, if you have social media, read our statements, because every single step of the way we are documenting our processes. It would appear inconsistent, Masechaba. I mean, you understand the nature of the entire industry when it comes to being a journalist in a newsroom, when it comes to, you understand the nature of the industry. And it requires a minister who is on the ground, ready to listen and engage. I mean, you'll see the other ministers out and about. If we had to phone any of the other ministers, they're readily available to hear us. It seems that there's a lot of inconsistency. We seem to see Minister Mthethwa at funerals. We don't seem to be seeing him answering, yes, Masechaba, the very important concerns that will spiral out of control. This is simply untrue, and we need to really bring an end to this narrative of Minister of Condolences and Minister of Congratulations. Yeah. It's not fair, because regardless of what is communicated through the ministry, through the department, at the end of the day, there are a select few members of the sector who have been targeting the minister. And if you go deeper into it, you yourself will come to the answers of your own questions. We are not being insensitive to the plight of artists and the plight of athletes, but what we are simply saying is that let us be balanced and let us be fair. The minister is a caring minister. And he is a minister whose humility is simply founded on the grounding that he allows his record to speak for itself. Before we round things up, we're running out of time. You spoke about your excitement with Bafana Bafana, and we heard ANC Deputy President David Mabuza speaking about how stadiums will not be open just yet to allow supporters up until the department reaches its goals of herd immunity when it comes to vaccinations. What's your response as a department? All right, so we certainly are excited about the process of getting fans back into stadiums. And over the last few weeks, the Deputy President's Office, led by Minister Nathi Mthethwa, of course, through the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture, there's a beautiful partnership, which is a national rollout tour campaign called Return to Play. It's in your hands. We have been going city to city, province to province, really just campaigning this vaccination drive to get as many people vaccinated as possible to reach what we now call population immunity, so that life as we know it can get back to normal. We can get fans back into stadiums. We can get back into theaters. We can host festivals once again. So I would just implore everyone to just go out there, get your jab, get vaccinated, guys. Yeah, well, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. And, okay, just on record again, because we are recording, this is live, rolling.
The minister will come here.
Which month? You've got to...
I can't. You have to understand, I mean, he's a minister, so his schedule is grueling. And by the way, the minister is getting ready to travel to Dubai, where once again, we are taking an entire group of South African artists and putting them out there on the world stage. It's an initiative of the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture. So he won't even be in the country next week. So I implore you to just give me some time. But I do know that the minister means well and that he definitely will want to commit to being here in studio with you.
In studio, either on a Saturday or Sunday between 6 to 9.
Sure.
That's your commitment. Thank you so much. Let's leave it there for now. The spokesperson of the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, Masechaba Khumalo, answering some of those tough questions that have been posed by several artists who have really been speaking about the mismanagement of funds, saying that they don't have much to look forward to when it comes to money in their pockets, asking a lot of questions, as you may have seen and heard in following the story around the National Arts Council.